My husband smashed my birthday cake into my face in front of our guests. I thought the humiliation would be the worst part of the night, but at the ER, the doctor took one look at my X-ray and discreetly revealing a hidden truth I was never supposed to discover. That discovery unraveled my marriage, my sense of safety, and my trust in everyone around me. As lies bled into betrayal and betrayal ignited revenge, I built a silent plan that turned every one of his cruel laughs into fuel. By the time the final consequences hit, I wasn't the victim anymore, I was the architect of justice. If you're hearing this, don't leave me here alone in this memory. Subscribe now, because if you walk away, you'll spend the rest of this story wondering why this happened to me, and even worse, what happened next. And if you refuse to subscribe, step into the comments and explain why you'd abandon someone moments before their life shatters. I always thought birthdays were supposed to feel warm, safe, like a soft glow wrapped around your heart. But that night in Miami, the air felt different, too loud, too sharp. The kind of night where even the music seems to watch you. It was my 34th birthday, and my husband, Marcus, insisted on throwing a rooftop party at our condo. I didn't want anything extravagant, but he always said appearances mattered. I didn't know he only cared about appearances when they made him look powerful. The cake came out 3 tiers, pink frosting, delicate sugar roses. I leaned forward to blow out the candle when his hand crushed the cake into my face. Frosting shot up my nose, into my eyelashes, smeared across my hair. Silence swallowed the rooftop. Then, laughter. His laughter. Loud, unrestrained, cruel. I felt the world tilt. Something cracked inside me quietly, invisibly. I stumbled back, dizzy, breath tight. The room flickered. Something was wrong more than humiliation. My vision blurred. A sharp pain stabbed behind my eye. I fainted. The ER lights buzzed overhead. Marcus wasn't there. Of course he wasn't. The doctor lifted the X-ray onto the light board. His eyes hardened. This shouldn't be here. Before I could ask, he stepped outside. And I heard him on the phone. Yes. It's her. No, she doesn't know. Minutes later, 2 officers walked in. They weren't there to take a statement. They were there because of what the X-ray revealed. Something Marcus never meant for me to survive discovering. The officer asked me a single question that froze the blood in my veins. Ma'am, has your husband ever pushed you? Hit you? Caused blunt trauma to your head? I whispered no, but the X-ray showed he had. A healed fracture. Old. Hidden. Deliberate. And suddenly, those accidental slips, those dizzy spells, those migraines, it all rushed back like a wave I'd been drowning under without knowing. I wasn't sure what hurt more, his laughter, or realizing he'd been breaking me long before that cake ever touched my face. I floated above myself as the officer explained protective measures, resources, safety plans. I heard everything and nothing. I nodded, but inside, I was collapsing like a house built on rot finally giving way. Marcus finally arrived. Drunk. Smirking. He told the officers it was all a misunderstanding. Told them I was dramatic. Told them they were wasting time. And they let him walk out. But when he turned back to smirk at me, I made my first quiet decision. I wouldn't stay his victim. Days later, while he showered, I unlocked his phone. I didn't expect to find hundreds of messages. Not just cheating, not just betrayal, but conversations about me, about my medical history, about the accident, and a contact saved only as X. Their messages referenced the fracture in my skull. Before I ever knew it existed, someone else knew. Someone else helped him hide it. I started recording everything. Every argument, every insult, every drunk confession. I found his financial secrets. 2 money missing from our accounts, cash withdrawals, burner phones. I smiled while handing him coffee. I kissed him goodnight. I let him think I was broken. But inside, I was sharpening myself. And the first person I confronted wasn't Marcus. X turned out to be a woman. A nurse who worked the night of an accident I never remembered. A nurse who documented injuries Marcus told her not to report. A nurse who received payoffs. She told me one sentence that nearly buckled my knees. Your husband didn't bring you in that night, a stranger did. If a stranger saved me once, I'd save myself now. I gathered documents, hospital logs, security footage, bank statements, his affair evidence, the nurse's confession. And then, I built a timeline. A strategy. A quiet war. But revenge requires patience. And I was about to run out. I found the video. Security footage from a club. Me barely conscious. A stranger supporting me. Blood on my face. And behind us. Marcus. Laughing. Filming. He let a stranger save me. So he wouldn't be blamed. I sent anonymous tips. Filed sealed reports. Prepared financial traps. Moved assets. Shifted accounts. Marcus thought life was normal. He didn't know every move he made was a step closer to the edge I built for him. The first consequence hit him at 2:13 a.m. He stormed into the living room waving a frozen bank account notice. I stayed calm. Too calm. It terrified him. He asked what I did. I told him. I finally stopped letting you kill me slowly. He froze. Because he knew I knew. But he didn't know the police were already on their way. The nurse panicked and tried to withdraw her statement. His lawyers moved quickly. Evidence went missing. A detective warned me I might lose everything. For the first time, I doubted myself. I felt that old fracture throbbing. The trauma humming. Then the stranger who saved me stepped forward. He wasn't a stranger. Not really. He was a bystander who saw Marcus push me outside the club. He carried me when Marcus walked away laughing. He filed a report. A report that was buried. And he had kept a copy. Suddenly, everything aligned. I handed the final evidence to the detective. The nurse testified. The stranger testified. Medical records resurfaced. Marcus was arrested. His accounts seized. His reputation shattered. His laughter, finally gone. But justice wasn't the ending. Not for me. I moved into a small apartment near the ocean. I slept without fear. I woke up without pain. I learned my own rhythms again. But some nights, when the waves hit the shore, I remembered the cake, the laughter, the fracture. Healing isn't forgetting. It's choosing what comes next. And I still owed the world the real ending. The final twist wasn't about Marcus. It wasn't about revenge. It was about me. I discovered that the fracture healed stronger than the original bone. And so did I. I built a new life, one that didn't shrink for anyone's ego or cruelty. If you listen closely, this story was never about breaking. It was about rebuilding. I never imagined the night would start with champagne bubbles drifting against the glow of Miami's skyline, and end with frosting crusted in my eyelashes while my husband's laughter carved itself into my bones. But if I'm being honest, I should have noticed the warning signs long before the cake. The evening air clung to my skin with that humid softness Miami always carries at night, a kind of warm, sticky embrace that makes the city feel alive. Music drifted from the rooftop speakers, something upbeat, something that made the guests sway and laugh as if they were floating. My birthday. My night. My moment. Or so I naively thought. I stood near the railing, watching the ocean beyond the skyline. The reflections from downtown shimmered across the water like rippled fire. For a moment it felt peaceful. I could almost pretend the world made sense. I could almost pretend that the man who insisted on hosting this rooftop celebration had done it out of love and not whatever motivation hid behind his careful smile. Marcus always cared about appearances more than feelings. He always had. Smile. Babe, he'd whisper at gatherings. People love a happy couple. People love a storybook. People love a lie. But that night, I tried. I really did. I had no idea how close I was to breaking. Guests moved around me in clusters, clinking glasses, laughing at jokes I couldn't hear. The rooftop lighting cast a warm glow across their faces, friends, co-workers, neighbors, all wrapped in soft gold as if the universe had chosen perfect scenery for my undoing. I tucked a strand of hair behind my ear, hoping no one noticed my hands shaking. Not out of fear, no. Not yet, but out of something I couldn't name. A restlessness. A quiet tremor in the air around me. I felt like a string pulled too tight, waiting to snap. Then Marcus appeared behind me. Arms sliding across my waist like he owned the rights to my body and my breathing. There you are, he murmured. Birthday girl hiding from her own party. I forced a smile. Just catching my breath. He leaned in, lips brushing the edge of my ear, not affectionately, but performatively. For the audience. Always for the audience. Don't disappear tonight, he said. Eyes are on us. Eyes were on me, all right. Just not for the reasons I thought. He led me toward the center of the rooftop, where the cake sat like an altar, 3 tiers, Pink frosting swirled like clouds, delicate sugar roses curling over the sides. Beautiful. Fragile. Expensive enough to feed a small village. People gathered. Phones lifted. Voices rose. Make a wish. Happy birthday. Lean in. Get closer. I stepped forward, heart thumping against my ribs. The candle flame flickered in the ocean breeze, dancing like a tiny, hopeful heartbeat. I inhaled, closed my eyes. I wished for peace, just a little peace. I opened my eyes to blow out the candle. And that's when it happened. A violent, wet smack. Cold frosting crushed my cheekbones. Pink icing smeared across my hairline. The weight of the cake heavy, shocking hit my face and chest as Marcus shoved it with both hands. For a moment, the world froze. My breath caught. My ears rang. I felt the frosting slide into my eyelashes, thick and sticky. My mouth tasted like sugar and humiliation. Everyone stared. And then, laughter. Not just from Marcus. From the guests. From friends. From strangers. From people who should have known better. Marcus doubled over, clutching his stomach, laughing so hard he wiped tears from his eyes. "Baby, look at you, oh my God, look," he gasped, pointing at me like I was a circus act. My vision blurred. Not from tears. From pain. A sharp pressure bloomed behind my right eye, hot, stabbing, so sudden I staggered backward. The rooftop tilted. The lights streaked. A wave of nausea punched the air from my lungs. I reached for the railing, missed, and collapsed to the floor, frosting smearing like pastel blood across the concrete. The laughter stopped, phones dipped. Voices turned tense. Someone said, "Is she okay?" Someone else said, "She just fainted." And then Marcus, still half laughing, muttered, "She's being dramatic." But I wasn't being dramatic. Something was wrong. Deeply, terribly wrong. I heard muffled shouting. Hands grabbing my shoulders. The world darkened at the edges like ink bleeding across paper. My last conscious thought wasn't fear. It wasn't pain. It was humiliation. The kind that seeps into your soul like poison. And then everything went dark. I woke to the sterile buzz of fluorescent lights. A cold mattress beneath me, the distant rhythm of someone's monitor beeping. The ER. My birthday dress was gone, replaced by a thin hospital gown that scratched against my skin. Frosting still crusted in my hair. My throat burned like I'd swallowed gravel. Something felt off. Wrong. Heavy. A doctor entered late 40 seconds. Tired eyes, steady posture, serious expression. He looked at me the way someone looks at a puzzle that shouldn't exist. He lifted an X-ray into the light. My X-ray. I stared at the strange shapes, the bone lines, the shadows. I didn't know what I was looking at. But he did. The doctor's jaw tightened. His voice dropped to a tone that made my gut twist. "Mrs. Alvarez, this shouldn't be here." I waited for him to explain. He didn't. Not yet. He stepped out into the hallway with the X-ray, closing the door behind him. I could still hear him, his voice, his urgency, his fear. "Yes. It's her. No, she doesn't know yet. Yes, I can confirm the fracture pattern. Send someone immediately." Minutes later, footsteps echoed down the hall. Heavy ones. Purposeful. 2 police officers walked in. Not rushing. Not panicked. But certain. They didn't ask me if I was okay. They didn't ask how I fainted. The first officer met my eyes with a weight that made my stomach drop. "Ma'am, we need to discuss what was found on your X-ray." My pulse thundered in my ears. My skin turned cold. The room shrank around me. Something inside me knew before he even said it. This wasn't about the cake. This was something older, darker, hidden. Something Marcus never expected anyone to find. The officer stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Mrs. Alvarez, what we found isn't from tonight. It's from a previous injury. A serious one. One that was never reported." And then, his next words shattered the last piece of my old life. "Someone hurt you." The 2 officers stood by my hospital bed like shadows cut out of heavier air. Their presence filled the room in a way machines and monitors never could. One of them, a woman with sharp eyes softened by something like pity, closed the door behind her. My ribs tightened. My hands trembled under the thin hospital blanket. "Mrs. Alvarez," she began softly, "you've been through something tonight." Her partner, broader, quieter, held the X-ray envelope like it was evidence. Not a medical file. Evidence. My stomach coiled. I fainted, I whispered. It was just the cake. The shock. The male officer shook his head. Not unkindly, but firmly. No, ma'am. You didn't faint because of the cake. I felt my veins pulse. My mouth dried. My heart stumbled into a messy rhythm. The female officer pulled a chair next to me. She didn't sit, she crouched, bringing herself to my eye level. Her voice dropped into something gentle, but it carried weight. The doctor saw your X-ray. He called us because he recognized a pattern, a very concerning one. I swallowed hard. What pattern? She drew in a slow breath. A healed orbital fracture. My world tilted. The ceiling warped. I've never broken anything, I whispered. But even as the words left my lips, a small, sharp memory sparked. A night 2 years earlier, a slammed door. Marcus's hand gripping my arm too hard, his anger hot and unpredictable. But no. That was an argument. Not this. The female officer spoke again, her tone steady. You didn't faint because of embarrassment. You fainted because you've had a previous trauma to your face. The doctor believes the impact from tonight aggravated an old fracture. I stared at her. My breath thinned to paper. The male officer slid the X-ray into the overhead light. The image glowed like a ghostly confession. He pointed to a dark, unnatural line curving near my right eye socket. See this? That's not from tonight. This is older. Months, possibly years. The room buzzed with electricity. I felt like I was floating outside my own body, hearing their words from somewhere far away. But I never. My throat closed. Pain warmed behind my eyes. I blinked and for a split second, a memory flickered. Marcus yelling. Me flinching. His elbow catching my cheek harder than he meant to. His apology quick, frantic, guilty. And me holding ice to my face in the bathroom while he said, "Don't make a big deal out of it. You bruise easily." My chest tightened. My fingers curled into fists beneath the blanket. The officers exchanged a glance. One of concern. The other of recognition. "Mrs. Alvarez," the female officer said softly, "has anyone ever harmed you?" I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. Not a sound. Not an admission. Not a denial. Just silence. Thick. Suffocating. "No one," I whispered finally. "No one hurts me." The male officer stepped forward slightly. "Your fracture says otherwise." I looked down at my hands. They looked small, fragile, not like mine. "I don't remember anything like that," I said, too quickly, too quietly. She tilted her head. "Are you afraid of someone?" My lips parted. I wanted to say no. I wanted to say yes. I wanted to scream. Instead, "I'm tired," I murmured. "I just want to go home." The officers lowered their gazes with a subtle heaviness, as though my answer told them more than anything else could. After a long moment, the female officer stood. "We're placing your case under review," she said gently. "The doctor believes the injury was caused by blunt force direct impact." The words slashed through me. Direct impact. Blunt force. Hidden history carved into my bones. "We're also filing a mandatory report," the male officer added. "Given the nature of the injury and the circumstances in which you collapsed." Mandatory report. Circumstances. The cake. The rooftop. The laughter. I felt heat rise beneath my skin. Shame burned like wildfire, chasing itself up my spine. "That wasn't Marcus, didn't he wouldn't hurt me." I said it too fast. Too rehearsed. Even I didn't believe myself. They didn't argue. They didn't need to. The female officer placed a card on the table beside me. "This has my direct number. For emergencies. Or anything you remember." I nodded, though my neck felt stiff and unnatural. As they reached the door, I forced myself to breathe, to anchor myself to something, anything. "Wait." They turned. "Can I?" I hesitated. "Can I see the X-ray again?" The male officer handed it to me. The room darkened. The glowing bone lines stared back at me. Silent and damning. There it was. Clear as daylight. A fracture etched like a signature. My signature. My past. My pain. I didn't remember it happening, but my bones did, and bones never lie. When the officers left, the room felt too quiet, too hollow, like the space between a heartbeat and a heartache. I sat there, replaying everything. The rooftop. The cake. The impact. The laughter. The sudden pain behind my eye, the collapse, and the doctor's voice when he said, "This shouldn't be here." I whispered into the dim air, how could I not know I broke my own face? But the answer crawled through my mind, unwelcome and undeniable. Because I didn't break it. Someone else did. Someone I loved. Someone who had access to me. Someone I trusted. Was it Marcus? The possibility pried at me, sharp and cold. I remember times Marcus grabbed my arm too tightly. Times he yelled close enough that his spit hit my cheek. Times he said, "You're too sensitive." Times he said, "You always overreact." Times he said, "Don't tell anyone you know how dramatic you get." I thought back to nights I cried quietly in the bathroom, telling myself it was hormones, or stress, or exhaustion. Not fear. Never fear. I'd built excuses like walls around his behavior, but walls can only hold back the truth for so long. A nurse entered quietly, pulling me from my spiraling thoughts. "Mrs. Alvarez?" she said with a soft smile. "You're awake. How are you feeling?" I tried to answer, but the words tangled in my throat. She checked the monitor, took my pulse, and gently wiped a spot of dried frosting from my hairline. "You gave us a scare," she murmured. "Your blood pressure dropped suddenly. Do you remember anything before the collapse?" I swallowed. My husband shoved the cake into my face. She paused. Her eyes flickered. Not with judgment, but with something sharper. Something protective. "He pushed the cake into your face?" She repeated slowly. "Yes." Her lips pressed together in a thin line. "That could absolutely aggravate an old fracture," she said under her breath, as if speaking to herself but not quite hiding it. Then she added, louder, "The doctor will be back soon to explain everything." Before she left, she hesitated at the door. Then turned. "You're safe here," she said softly. The words hit me harder than the cake ever did. Safe? Why did I need to hear that? Was I unsafe at home? With Marcus? My hands trembled again. The idea felt foreign. Impossible. Unthinkable. But so was waking up to police officers holding an X-ray that told a story my memory didn't. Minutes passed. Or hours. Time blurred into something viscous and slow. Then, the door opened, and Marcus walked in. In a crisp shirt. Hair freshly brushed. Face composed. Expression perfect. He looked like a man arriving for breakfast. Not a man whose wife collapsed at her birthday party. He wasn't frantic. He wasn't worried. He wasn't even sweaty. He was calm. Too calm. He stepped toward me with an exaggerated sigh, as if my being in the hospital inconvenienced him. "Baby," he murmured, leaning in to kiss my forehead, "you scared everyone tonight." I flinched. Not dramatically. Not intentionally. Just, reflexively. His lips hovered instead of touching me. And his eyes, dark, calculating, sparked with something sharp. "Are you okay?" he asked. But he didn't sound concerned. He sounded rehearsed. Practiced. Performative. I swallowed. The doctor found something. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "What?" "A healed fracture. Near my eye." He blinked. Once. Slowly. Then he forced a confused frown. "What, from tonight?" "No," I whispered. "From before." His eyes flickered. Just for a second. A flicker so fast most people wouldn't catch it. But I did. Because I'd spent years learning to read the weather inside him. He cleared his throat. "You must have hit your face sometime and forgotten." "I don't forget breaking my own face," I said quietly. He stiffened. But only for a moment. Then he stepped closer, lowering his voice to a near whisper. "You're tired. You're overwhelmed. This is a lot. Don't jump to conclusions." His hand brushed the blanket, sliding toward mine. I pulled my hand back. He froze. His expression hardened for a split second. A flash of something cold, territorial. Then just as quickly, it disappeared. He softened his voice again. "Come on, sweetheart. I would never hurt you." Those words, those exact words. Why did they sound like déjà vu? Why did they echo through a memory I couldn't fully access? Before I could answer, the doctor entered, and everything shifted. He glanced between us, then spoke bluntly. "Mr. Alvarez, I need a moment alone with your wife." Marcus tensed. "Can't it wait?" "No," the doctor said. "It cannot." Marcus stared at him, then at me. A long, penetrating look that felt like a silent warning. Finally, he forced a smile. "I'll be right outside, baby." He kissed my forehead. This time slowly, deliberately, and walked out. But as he left, he whispered so quietly only I could hear, "Don't say anything stupid." My blood turned cold. The door closed behind him. And the doctor exhaled like he'd been holding his breath since Marcus walked in. He sat on the edge of my bed. His voice low. Serious. Earnest. "Mrs. Alvarez. That man cannot take you home tonight." My heart stopped. "What?" I whispered. He continued, each word heavier than the last. "We found more than the fracture. There are signs of older injuries, faded bruising patterns, irregular scar tissue. We believe these were caused by repeated blunt force trauma." My lungs refused to expand. The room dimmed. "Are you saying—" I couldn't finish. The doctor nodded. "Yes. Someone has hurt you before. And we have a duty to report it." My throat closed. My eyes burned. My hands shook uncontrollably beneath the blanket. "Mrs. Alvarez." He leaned in, voice a whisper. "You are not safe with your husband." The doorknob turned. Slowly. Deliberately. Marcus was coming back in. And this time, he wasn't alone. I sat on the edge of the hospital bed, blanket clutched tightly, as Marcus's shadow lingered outside the door. The silence was heavy, thick with unsaid words, threats, and something older, darker. The room felt colder than it had before, cold not from air conditioning but from anticipation, from the way the air carries danger when someone you love has the capacity to harm. I tried to tell myself it was just the X-ray. That perhaps the fracture was an accident, something I'd forgotten, something no one intended. But the truth had a way of clawing through excuses like sunlight through concrete. The doctor stepped closer, placing a hand lightly on my shoulder, not to soothe but to anchor me to reality. "Mrs. Alvarez," he said quietly, "I need you to understand what we're seeing here. The fracture isn't new. It's been there for some time. Possibly months, maybe years." I blinked. My lips parted. The words hung in the air like smoke from a fire I couldn't escape. Months, maybe years. My mind raced through nights I had blocked away. The argument 2 years ago where he slammed the kitchen cabinet door too hard. The night he pushed me just enough, he said, to get my attention. Every minor collision, every oops that I convinced myself was an accident, it all began to replay, sharper, crueler, and unmistakably deliberate. "Do you remember ever hitting your face?" the doctor asked. His voice was patient, professional, but it carried a gravity that shook me. "No," I whispered. "I have never. I don't remember." He shook his head slowly. "Sometimes, patients don't recall trauma, especially when it's inflicted by someone close, someone trusted." I wanted to speak, to deny, to rationalize, to scream, but my throat caught. The truth was a living thing crawling up my spine. The door opened slightly, and the nurse who had checked on me earlier peeked in. Her eyes flicked to Marcus, who lingered in the hallway just out of view. Her gaze lingered on me for a second longer than comfort allowed. Something unspoken passed between us, warning, reassurance, fear. The doctor motioned for me to look at the X-ray again. I did, my fingers trembling as they traced the ghostly line across my orbital bone. "That mark," he said, pointing, "was caused by direct, blunt trauma. Not a fall, not an accident. Someone hit you with force." I felt my stomach drop. Nausea rose, hot and thick, and I gripped the blanket harder. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. I couldn't speak. And then my mind landed on him. Marcus. Could it have been him? I tried to remember specifics, small details, moments I had written off as inconsequential. The night he accidentally elbowed me in the ribs. The time he shoved me against the wall, by mistake. The arguments that ended with me in tears while he excused his hand, his words, his actions. The look in his eyes, the slight grin when I flinched, as if my fear amused him. It all pointed in one direction. I hadn't wanted to see it. I hadn't wanted to believe it. But the X-ray didn't lie. Bones don't lie. And now, with the officers and the doctor, the lie I had been living convincing myself it was my fault, that I was clumsy, that I was dramatic, was exposed. The door opened fully this time. Marcus stepped in. Calm. Too calm. Composed. Perfectly timed. His expensive shoes clicked against the floor. The sound was sharp, precise, a metronome counting down the moments of my unraveling. He stopped at the edge of the bed. A faint, rehearsed smile touched his lips. Feeling better? He asked, voice syrupy. Smooth. Calculated. I flinched. I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell him to leave. I wanted to rip the mask from his face. But I didn't. I couldn't. Not yet. The doctor cleared his throat. This fracture, he said, shows signs of repeated trauma. Mrs. Alvarez, it appears this is not the first time your face has been injured this way. Marcus's smile faltered for just a fraction of a second. A shadow of recognition or guilt flashed across his eyes. I saw it. And it burned into me. It was him. My hands clenched the blanket until my knuckles turned white. The thought spun around inside my chest like broken glass. He didn't say a word. He didn't need to. The silence between the three of us was loud. The doctor continued. We're required to file a report with law enforcement. This type of injury, it suggests deliberate harm. I felt the words like cold water pouring over me. Deliberate harm. Someone wanted to hurt me. And the person who held my trust, my marriage, my home, was the first suspect. Marcus stepped closer. I can explain, he said, voice carefully light. It's probably nothing. Maybe a fall you don't remember. You're sensitive, babe. You exaggerate. His words were venom disguised as sweetness. I realized then he was trained to manipulate, to rewrite memory, to make me doubt myself. You hurt me, I whispered. Softly. Barely audible. He blinked. His jaw tightened. Then the practiced smile returned. I would never hurt you, he said. The words were empty, but his eyes betrayed him for the briefest flicker of a second. Cold, calculating, unsympathetic. I knew he had done it. I knew it. The nurse returned with a cup of water. She set it on the tray beside me. You're going to be okay, she said softly, leaning closer. We're going to make sure no one can hurt you again. I nodded, barely trusting my own body to sit upright. Everything inside me trembled: anger, betrayal, shock, disbelief. I tried to speak, to confront, to accuse, but the words tangled. I felt trapped in my own head. The X-ray, the doctor, the nurses, the officers waiting outside. They all knew the truth I was only beginning to grasp. Marcus leaned against the wall, watching me with that same faint, controlled smile. Like a predator observing a cage. I had been trapped all along. That night, after Marcus left the room under the guise of getting coffee, I sat alone. I replayed the moments that now screamed betrayal. His laughter when the cake hit me. The old bruises I had convinced myself were clumsy accidents. The nights I cried silently while he slept beside me. Every instance became a thread in a dark tapestry of lies, control, and abuse. The betrayal wasn't just physical. It was mental, emotional, relentless. And now, I could no longer ignore it. The phone on the bedside table buzzed. A message. From an unknown number. We know what happened. Stay safe. You're not alone. I froze. A stranger? A friend? Someone who knew Marcus better than he thought. Someone else knew. Someone else had been watching. My heartbeat raced, adrenaline coiling through my veins. The betrayal was complete. My husband, the man who should have been my protector, was the one who had broken me. And yet, help existed, just beyond the shadows, just beyond my fear. As I stared at the phone, I realized, the fracture in my face was only the beginning. What Marcus had left inside me physically, emotionally, mentally was far more dangerous. And the next message blinked on the screen. Meet me. I have proof. You need to see this before he comes back. The hospital room had grown quiet. The fluorescent lights hummed faintly above me, casting long, sterile shadows that pressed against the walls like invisible witnesses. I sat on the edge of the bed, blanket wrapped tightly around me, staring at my hands. My fingers felt foreign, small, fragile, trembling. I could still feel the weight of the cake smeared across my face, the laughter echoing in my ears, the sharp sting behind my right eye where the old fracture had been hit again. It wasn't just the physical pain that crushed me. It was the realization of the life I had been living under a man who could, without consequence, hurt me and smile while doing it. I tried to breathe. Deeply. Slowly. But even that felt foreign. How do you relearn to breathe quietly when every inhale reminds you of betrayal? I closed my eyes, and the memory returned, relentless. The rooftop, the laughter, the cold metal railing beneath my palms as I stumbled, the sickening sound of frosting splattering against skin. laughter erupting louder than my own heartbeat. And then the sharp, stabbing pain that made me collapse. I hadn't just fainted from shock. I had collapsed under the weight of knowing the truth. The man I loved, the man I married, was capable of cruelty I had ignored, justified, and excused for far too long. The phone buzzed again on the bedside table. Unknown number. I hesitated. My pulse raced. I didn't know if it was hope or danger. The message read, "You need to see this. It proves what he's done. Alone. Tonight. Can you come? Alone. Tonight." Some part of me wanted to ignore it. To stay safe, to hide. To pretend the betrayal was only a fracture and not the fracture of my entire life. But another part, hot, angry, vengeful, burned inside me. That part whispered, "You've been silent too long." I typed back. "Where?" Almost immediately, a reply came. "Abandoned warehouse on NE 12th. Midnight. Come alone." Midnight. Alone. Every instinct screamed danger. Every fear told me to stay. Every memory of his smirk, his laughter, the X-ray flashing evidence of old abuse, every bone in my body screamed, "Go." Because if I stayed silent, nothing would change. And I couldn't stay silent anymore. The rest of the day passed in a haze of monitoring, questions, and nurses' quiet concern. I replayed Marcus's words over and over. "I would never hurt you." I could still hear the rehearsed calm in his voice. I could still see the faint flicker of cold calculation in his eyes. Betrayal isn't always loud. Sometimes it hides behind calm tones, carefully crafted smiles, and small manipulations that make you doubt yourself. It is quiet. It is insidious. And it lodges itself deep inside, like poison in the marrow. By evening, the hospital room had emptied. Marcus had left under the pretense of getting coffee. The officers had gone back to their rounds, and the nurse on shift had given me a sympathetic glance before retreating to the station. I sat alone in the sterile room, the weight of what I had learned pressing down, suffocating. I remembered every argument, every small shove, every instance of accidental pain I had endured. I realized how much I had ignored to preserve the image of the marriage I thought I wanted. How long had I been ignoring the signs? I thought back to the little things I had dismissed. The bruises I convinced myself came from falling downstairs or bumping into furniture. The time I cried silently while he slept beside me, muttering excuses to myself. The control over finances, friends, and even my own voice, subtle, invisible chains that had tightened around me. It was all a web. And I had been trapped in it without realizing. Hours passed slowly, each tick of the clock louder than the last. I was alone, yet hyper-aware of every creak in the floor, every shadow cast by the dim overhead light. The hospital, normally a place of care, felt like a cage. And then I heard it, footsteps outside my room. I froze. Not because of Marcus, he was supposed to be gone. Not because of anyone I recognized, but because instinct, that ancient sense honed by years of survival, told me danger was near. A key turned in the lock. The door opened slowly, revealing a figure shrouded in shadows. "Mrs. Alvarez?" The voice was low, calm, and urgent. It made the hair on the back of my neck rise. "Yes," I whispered. The figure stepped closer. The dim hospital light illuminated him, a stranger, middle-aged, eyes sharp but kind. "My name is Javier," he said. "I work with law enforcement. I've been monitoring Marcus Alvarez for months. What happened tonight? It confirms everything." My breath caught. I wanted to scream, to bolt, to demand proof. But I couldn't. The weight of the truth pressed down on me, heavy and unavoidable. He extended a small folder toward me. Inside, I saw photos. Bills. Reports. Security footage. All detailing Marcus's patterns, previous injuries, manipulations, and even subtle intimidation tactics. Everything I had brushed off, ignored, or rationalized, it was all documented. "I know it's a lot," Javier said, sitting beside me. "But you need to understand, you are not imagining this. Marcus has hurt you repeatedly. This was deliberate. He's dangerous." I felt my knees give way. Tears blurred my vision. A hot, furious wave of anger rose in me, mingled with fear. I had been silenced for too long. I had been betrayed in every way possible, physically, emotionally, mentally. And now, I had evidence. I had confirmation. I had proof, but proof came with a cost. The realization that the man I married, the man I loved, was a predator in plain sight made my stomach turn. Javier continued, his voice low but insistent. We need you to be careful tonight. Do not go home. Do not trust him. We have a safe house ready. But first, you need to see everything I've gathered. You need to understand the full scope of what he's done before you act. I nodded numbly. The folder felt heavy in my hands, weightier than the cake, heavier than the X-ray, heavier than the betrayal itself. This was the moment my life shifted. From victim to survivor. But survival required strategy, patience, and a heart hardened by betrayal. That night, I couldn't sleep. I replayed the rooftop, the laughter, the pain, the X-ray, the unknown messages. Every memory now had layers I hadn't seen before. Every detail, every word, every gesture took on new meaning. The emotional fallout was overwhelming. The anger simmered just beneath my skin. The heartbreak threatened to consume me. But amid it all, a strange clarity emerged. I knew two things. I could never go back. I had to fight back. And that's when I made my first vow. I would not be silent. I would not be controlled. I would not allow Marcus Alvarez to define my life any longer. The path ahead was dangerous, uncertain, but it was mine to walk. And for the first time in years, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time: power. As I stared out the window at the Miami skyline, lights shimmering across the water, my phone buzzed again. The message was short, simple, terrifying. Meet me. There's proof you can't ignore. Midnight, any 12th. And I knew. Tonight, everything would change. The city lights of Miami stretched below me like a glittering cage, neon reflections bouncing off the water. And I realized I had never truly seen it before. Not really. I had spent years living in a beautiful, sunny prison luxury apartments, rooftop parties, expensive dinners, but every smile, every toast, every champagne bubble had been a mask, a carefully staged illusion hiding what Marcus truly was. Tonight, the illusion was cracking. I left the hospital under Javier's careful guidance. He drove in silence, his eyes on the road, alert, scanning the night for shadows, for threats. Every few blocks, he glanced at me, assessing, gauging, weighing whether I could handle what we were about to uncover. I gripped the folder in my hands, the same folder I had stared at for hours in the hospital room. Security footage. Police reports. Invoices from mysterious businesses. Photos of bruises I didn't remember but which the files confirmed. Every piece formed a puzzle I hadn't wanted to see. A puzzle that screamed Marcus's betrayal louder than any scream I had swallowed over the years. I felt sick. Not from fear, no, not entirely, but from the raw, suffocating realization that I had lived beside a man capable of deliberate cruelty, manipulation, and calculated deception for years. I swallowed, trying to push back the bile rising in my throat. Javier parked in a deserted lot near NE 12th, the kind of place where the shadows swallowed everything whole. The street lamps flickered in tired orange arcs, casting long skeletal shadows across cracked pavement. Here, Javier said, voice low. This is where your proof is waiting. But be careful. He may know we're watching. I nodded. Careful. I repeated it in my mind like a mantra. Careful. Watch everything. Trust no one. Even the man I once loved. We approached the warehouse. Rusted metal doors, graffiti chipped along the sides. The air smelled of oil and damp concrete, the kind of place that whispered secrets the world had forgotten. Inside, dim light from a single bulb swayed, casting long shadows across stacked crates. At first, it seemed empty, then a figure stepped from the shadows, a man, mid-30s, unassuming, yet with eyes that didn't miss a detail. You're early, he said, his voice calm but sharp. Not many people come alone when the stakes are this high. I came, I said softly, because I have to know. I have to see everything. He nodded. Good. You need to understand the scope of what he's done. He handed me a USB drive, small, unremarkable, but heavy with implication. Everything you need is here, he said. Files, footage, communications, everything. Proof that Marcus Alvarez isn't the man you think he is. My hands shook as I took it. Proof? I whispered. He nodded. Proof that the man you married loved is not only abusive but has been systematically trying to control, intimidate, and manipulate you for years. I took a deep breath, trying to steady the storm rising in my chest. Anger, fear, betrayal, rage. All mingled in a dizzying swirl of heat and pressure. The USB drive clicked into Javier's laptop. The screen flickered, then illuminated files organized by date, by type, by severity. There were photos clear, undeniable. Pictures of bruises on my arms, my ribs, my face. Taken months ago. Staged accidents he had dismissed. Emails, carefully deleted but recovered. Threats veiled as concern. Reminders that I owed him loyalty, obedience, silence. Videos, security footage. Footage of me arriving at home, Marcus behind me. The hallway lights casting me in golden innocence while his shadow loomed over me with intent, calculated movements that I had ignored, rationalized, excused. All the times I thought I had been clumsy. All the times I thought I had imagined pain. I hadn't. My chest tightened. A wave of rage rolled through me, hot and sharp, as if fire had replaced blood in my veins. He had tried to convince me for years that I was dramatic, sensitive, overreacting. That I misremembered things. That I imagined abuse. And I had believed him. Then I found something that made my stomach turn colder than ice. Files on financial manipulation. Offshore accounts, hidden credit cards in my name. Transfers I hadn't authorized. Purchases for things I didn't even know existed. He had been controlling everything about me, my body, my mind, my life, my money under the guise of love, trust, and partnership. And worse, there were communications between him and a woman named Lara Vasquez. The same woman who had been at my birthday party, mingling, smiling, pretending to be a friend. Messages confirmed everything. Secret meetings, financial betrayals. Calculated moves designed to undermine my career, my reputation, my life. Every step I had taken towards success, manipulated. Every triumph I had celebrated, diminished. Every moment I thought I had control. Stolen from me. I slammed my hands onto the table, shaking. I can't believe this, I whispered, voice low, shaking with anger and disbelief. Javier didn't flinch. You have to, he said. Because if you don't, he will continue to manipulate you, control you, and possibly hurt you further. He underestimated you. And now it's your turn to understand what you're up against. I stared at the screen. Every secret, every betrayal, every hidden act of cruelty. I realized then that the man who laughed while smashing cake into my face wasn't just cruel in the moment. He had been building a lifetime of control, a history of manipulation, a web of deceit that I had only just begun to untangle. And now I had the pieces. Hours passed as I combed through files. The anger coiled tighter with every new piece of evidence. Images of bruises I had long tried to forget. Bank statements proving theft and manipulation. Emails proving lies. Messages proving betrayal. And a list of people who had been complicit: friends, colleagues, even family members. The betrayal was larger than I had imagined. More systemic, more deliberate, more dangerous. But the clarity that came with truth also brought power. I was no longer blind. I was no longer silent. I was no longer the victim he had trained me to be. I leaned back, taking a deep breath, feeling the rage and sorrow in me combine into something singular and dangerous. I whispered to myself, voice low and steady. I will not be controlled anymore. Not by him. Not by anyone. Javier looked at me, eyes steady. You have proof now. The question is, what will you do with it? I didn't answer immediately. The thought of revenge, of reclaiming my power, of dismantling everything he had built to control me, it pulsed in my chest like a heartbeat ready to explode. Then my phone buzzed. Another message. Unknown number. He knows you've seen it. Be careful. Midnight is your only chance. Midnight. Alone. Proof in hand. And the man who destroyed me, waiting. I realized the depth of my situation. The secrets he thought were hidden were mine now. And with that knowledge came a chilling certainty. He would never see it coming. Not until it was too late. I didn't sleep that night. Not really. The Miami skyline outside the safe house flickered like 1,000 warning lights. Neon signs bounced across the water, reflecting a distorted city in motion. Boats moved slowly, horns blaring faintly in the distance. Life carried on as if I were not unraveling. As if the man who had spent years controlling me was not out there, lurking in plain sight. I sat cross-legged on the edge of the bed, laptop open, the USB drive plugged in, scrolling through the files again. The details of Marcus's deceit were endless, but my mind was already forming patterns, mapping connections, cataloging weaknesses. The small victories came first. His emails proving financial manipulation. The security footage showing subtle patterns of intimidation. Evidence of collusion with Lara Vasquez, the woman who had pretended to be my friend. Each piece was a thread I could pull. A lever I could use. A chink in his armor. I realized something terrifying and exhilarating. He had underestimated me. He assumed I was naive, compliant, afraid. And for a long time, he was right. But no longer. I called Javier, careful to use a burner phone provided by law enforcement. "We need a plan," I whispered. "Something he won't see coming. Something surgical." Javier nodded. "We'll proceed carefully. But first, small victories. Test his reactions. Gauge his movements. Don't confront directly yet. You're not ready. You are not ready." I understood. He had spent years building a web of control. I couldn't take it down in one blow. But I could chip at it. Slowly. Quietly. Strategically. The next day I returned to the apartment I had once called home. Marcus was there, oblivious, assuming I would be fragile, compliant, perhaps even grateful for his concern. I walked in with careful confidence. Calm. I smiled. Just a fraction, controlled, careful. "I just got discharged," I said lightly. "Thanks for checking in." His eyes lit up not with love but with satisfaction. The satisfaction of a man who believes he has power. He reached for me, casual, practiced, a gesture of false intimacy. I stepped back. A subtle, deliberate move. A small victory. He blinked, just once, too quickly, before regaining composure. "You're fragile," he said softly. "You need to rest." "I'm fine," I said firmly, my voice low but steady. Small victories. Boundaries he wasn't expecting. Over the next few days I implemented more subtle tests. I opened a separate account in my name only, routing minor funds to ensure I had independent access without his knowledge. I followed his movements carefully, noting patterns, routines, and the people who assisted him in secrecy. I quietly confirmed who could be trusted friends, colleagues, even some family members. Small allies, unnoticed by him, but crucial for when the time came. Each act felt small. Insignificant. But in reality, they were the first cracks, first signs that I was reclaiming agency. One evening, after Marcus left for a late meeting, I sat alone in the living room, laptop open, analyzing a spreadsheet of financial irregularities. Every misappropriation, every hidden transfer, every subtle intimidation pattern, mapped. I felt something I hadn't felt in years: control, power, awareness, clarity. I whispered to myself, "You underestimated me. You assumed fear would define me. It won't." And with that came the next realization. Small victories are dangerous because they build confidence. I had been silent for too long. I had allowed manipulation to define my life. But every small act now, every test, every observation, every hidden ledger was a declaration. A week passed. Marcus, as predicted, grew complacent. He did not suspect I had seen the files. He did not suspect I had confirmed patterns of betrayal. His arrogance became a weapon in my hands. One evening, I decided to act. I called a friend who had unknowingly witnessed some of Marcus's manipulations at social events. I framed it carefully, casually. "Hey, did you ever notice odd behavior at that party? Financially, unusual interactions?" Her eyes widened. Yes, actually," she whispered. "I thought I imagined it, but, confirmation, allies. Small victories." I smiled quietly, letting her words sink in. Each ally, each piece of evidence, each subtle act of resistance was a victory, no matter how small. Later that night, I checked my phone. Another unknown message appeared. "You're moving fast." Good. But he's watching. Careful. I realized then, Marcus's arrogance was both his strength and his weakness. He thought he was untouchable, and that made him vulnerable. I began to see patterns everywhere. How he timed his absences. How he communicated with Lara, always subtly, to avoid suspicion. How he underestimated my resilience. The pattern became clear, and I started to understand the only way forward. Patience, strategy, and precision. Another small victory came unexpectedly. I intercepted one of Marcus's messages to Lara. A short, careless text, intended to be secret. She's getting suspicious. Quiet her. My blood ran cold. But anger quickly replaced fear. Quiet her? The audacity. The cruelty. The contempt. I saved the message. Screenshot. Proof. Weaponized later. Every message, every transaction, every minor act of control was a thread I could pull. And for the first time, I knew exactly how to start unraveling the web he had spun. Days later, I tested him again. At dinner, casual, calm, I asked questions he wasn't expecting. Questions about expenses, friends, trivial business matters. He stumbled slightly, just a fraction. A micro-expression, gone before anyone else could notice. Victory. Each small crack in his composure fueled my confidence. Each minor stumble reassured me. He could be unmasked. And I realized something dangerous. Every small victory, every calculated step, brought me closer to confrontation. The tension built. The stakes rose. And the calm, measured anger inside me became something more. Strategy. Late that night, I sat alone in the dim glow of my laptop, reviewing intercepted messages, financial reports and patterns of betrayal. A sudden alert flashed on the screen. Marcus is moving tonight. He suspects something. He's coming home early. Everything I had built, every small victory, was about to be tested. And I realized, tonight, the first real confrontation was inevitable. I waited. The safe house was quiet except for the faint hum of the air conditioner and the occasional creak of the building settling. Outside, Miami pulsed with life, oblivious to the storm brewing inside me. Every small victory, every observation, every intercepted message had led to this night. Marcus had moved carelessly, assuming I was still fragile, obedient, and unaware. But I had watched. I had learned. And I was ready. Hours passed. Each minute stretched, heavy with anticipation. I felt every beat of my heart in my ears, a drum counting down the moments until confrontation. I double-checked my phone. The unknown message from before glowed. He's coming early. Be ready. I didn't need Javier to tell me twice. I knew exactly what that meant. Marcus was walking into a trap of his own arrogance. The sound of keys in the front door echoed through the empty corridors of the safe house. I tensed, holding my breath, every nerve on fire. And then he appeared. Marcus Alvarez. My husband. The man who had spent years controlling me, belittling me, hiding his cruelty behind charm and wealth. He stepped inside. The faint trace of cologne lingering in the air, a mask for the predator beneath. Home early, I said casually, trying to sound calm, controlled. He smiled. A small, practiced smile. Had some urgent matters, he said, voice smooth. Didn't want to wake you. He didn't notice the subtle shift in my posture. The way my eyes lingered on him, calm but sharp. The quiet readiness in my hands. I was no longer fragile. I was no longer afraid. I invited him to sit, carefully, deliberately, like a hostess playing a role. Sit, I said softly, gesturing to the chair. We need to talk. His eyes flickered, just slightly. The smallest hint of suspicion. You're tense, he said, voice smooth but probing. Everything okay? I smiled faintly. Fine. Just thinking. I let the silence stretch. A predator grows uncomfortable in silence. He would feel it. And then, I struck. I know, I said, low, controlled. I know everything. His smile faltered. No. What? His voice was calm, too calm, testing. I held up the folder. The USB, the printed emails, photos, and messages. Every single betrayal laid bare before him. He went pale. A flash of genuine fear crossing his face before the practiced mask returned. You don't understand, he said quickly, voice trembling ever so slightly. It's not what you think. Oh, I understand perfectly, I said. Every lie. Every secret. Every act you thought I'd never uncover. I laid it out in front of him piece by piece. The old fractures hidden behind excuses. The bruises dismissed as clumsiness. The financial manipulations, the offshore accounts, the hidden credit cards, the emails and texts with Lara, the secret meetings, the orchestrated attempts to undermine me. He tried to interrupt, tried to charm, tried to explain, but I didn't let him. I had waited too long to listen to his excuses. Every word I spoke cut through the facade he had spent years building. And then, the twist. As I laid out the last piece of evidence, I noticed the tiniest detail on his laptop screen. A folder overlooked, encrypted but not by me. I had learned to recognize his patterns. I opened it. Inside, the files weren't just about me. They weren't just manipulations and betrayals directed at me. They were about every woman he had ever dated. Every act, every plan, every manipulation meticulously documented. He had been doing this for years. Not just me. Not just Laura. Not just the career. The money, the image. Every woman he encountered became a project. A chess piece. A target. The sheer magnitude of his deceit, the breadth of his betrayal, it was staggering. I felt a wave of disgust, fear, and anger. And yet, beneath it, something darker, a seed of exhilaration. I had proof. I had power. And he had underestimated me. He tried to recover. Look, it's not. I cut him off. No. Enough. You underestimated me. You assumed I was fragile, obedient, silent. But I'm none of those things. Every microexpression, every hesitation, every flicker of fear in his eyes was satisfying. The predator, caught in his own trap. I leaned closer, voice low, deliberate. Do you know what happens when someone like me finally stops being afraid? He swallowed, eyes darting, calculating. For the first time in years, he was genuinely afraid. Then came the revelation that shattered him further. I held up a single email, dated months ago. From Lara to Marcus, subject line, she's more aware than we thought. Lara had warned him. She knew I was discovering his manipulations. And he had ignored her. Not only had he underestimated me, he had ignored the warnings of his own accomplices. The weight of that realization hit him like a punch. His composure cracked for the first time. I watched it happen, deliberate, precise, savoring the moment. And then he laughed. A short, bitter laugh. Do you really think this changes anything? He asked. I didn't answer immediately. I let the silence stretch, let the tension build, let him feel the shift in power. Finally, I spoke. It changes everything. Because now. I know. And now, everyone will know if I choose. I leaned back, calm, controlled. No fear. No hesitation. Only clarity. The room was silent except for his shallow breathing and my steady heartbeat. The predator, the manipulator, the man who had controlled me, was finally facing the consequences of underestimating me. The betrayal had been revealed in its full magnitude. And now, with every secret laid bare, the stage was set. For retaliation. For justice. For me. As I closed the folder, the phone buzzed. Another unknown number. He knows. Move now. Don't let him see you coming. The trap I had planned was about to escalate. And nothing would ever be the same. The city was quiet that night. Or maybe it just seemed quiet because I was no longer living in the illusion of safety. I sat in the dim light of the safe house, laptop open, files scattered across the table like pieces of a puzzle waiting to be assembled. Every betrayal, every secret, every calculated move Marcus had made against me and countless others was now a weapon in my hands. I realized, then, that revenge isn't about rage alone. It's about precision, strategy, timing. And I had all three. I opened a blank document and began to map everything. Every ally I could trust. Every weakness Marcus had. Every misstep he had made in underestimating me. Small victories had taught me that power comes quietly. That the predator can be unmasked not through brute force, but through calculated exposure. Step by step, I outlined my plan. Consolidate all proof of Marcus's betrayals, manipulations, and crimes. Create duplicates, hide backups, ensure nothing could be destroyed. Identify the people closest to him who could be swayed, exposed, or neutralized. Allies can become weapons but only if wielded correctly. Wait for moments when he is most vulnerable, his arrogance, his routines, his reliance on secrecy. Start small. Test reactions. Escalate strategically. Never rush. It wasn't just about revenge. It was about reclaiming control. It was about dismantling the life he had built on deception, one calculated step at a time. The first step was subtle reconnaissance. I needed to know his daily patterns, his contacts, the rhythm of his life. I started tracking him discreetly, blending into the background as he went about his routine, always careful not to alert him. I observed. When he met Lara, how he communicated with associates about financial transactions. The times he felt most untouchable, most arrogant. Every observation added to the blueprint of retribution. Next came the allies. I reached out to those who had been unintentionally complicit: friends, colleagues, even distant family. Each conversation was delicate, precise. No accusations. No overt threats. Only questions, subtle hints, and careful observation of reactions. I realized then that allies could be more valuable than evidence alone. People underestimated are always the most powerful weapon. I also began testing Marcus again. Small provocations, carefully calculated, just enough to observe his responses without alerting him. Slightly questioning finances, mentioning events he had tried to hide. Observing micro-expressions, subtle slips in his careful facade. Each slip, each hesitation, each flicker of fear or frustration told me something invaluable. He was vulnerable. He was arrogant. And he had underestimated me. But the plan required more than observation. It required deception. I had to become invisible, unassuming, unpredictable. I began altering my patterns, changing my routines, leaving decoy movements to mislead him, using burner phones, encrypted emails, and hidden cameras to document his behavior, feeding him subtle hints, nudges, calculated mistakes that would draw out his worst instincts. Every move was part of a larger strategy. Every act, no matter how small, was a step toward dismantling him entirely. Then came the psychological element. I knew Marcus thrived on control, on manipulation. He believed in his superiority. His arrogance was his greatest vulnerability. I began crafting scenarios to exploit it. Small but visible victories to make him overconfident. False narratives designed to lure him into revealing secrets. Carefully placed breadcrumbs to manipulate his decisions without him realizing it. The more I studied him, the clearer it became. His downfall would not come from anger but from strategy, from precision, from knowing exactly which strings to pull and when. I spent days refining the plan. I created multiple contingencies, backup routes, and hidden caches of evidence. Files duplicated in secure locations. Contacts briefed and ready. Escape routes mapped if he suspected confrontation. I wasn't just planning revenge. I was building a fortress of control, one that he could never breach. Then, a breakthrough. While reviewing the intercepted communications between Marcus and Lara, I discovered something unexpected. Lara had her own agenda. She wasn't loyal to him. She had been manipulating him just as much as he had manipulated me. And that created an opening. If I played this right, I could use her ambition against him. Turn one manipulator against another. And all while remaining unseen. I began drafting a series of moves. Turn Lara's greed into leverage. Use his paranoia against him. Expose him publicly at the exact moment he felt invincible. Every small victory I had won before now seemed like training. Every observation, every intercepted message, every tiny crack in his composure, led to this. I realized, finally, that revenge isn't just about action. It's about patience, timing, and exploiting weakness without hesitation. By the end of that night, I had a complete blueprint. Every move, every counter, every possible outcome considered. I leaned back, exhausted, but exhilarated. The fear that had once consumed me was gone. In its place, purpose. I whispered to myself, voice low and steady, "This is only the beginning. And when it ends, it will end on my terms." Just as I closed the laptop, my phone buzzed. Another unknown message. "He suspects you're planning something. Tonight, he's not coming home." The first real move had been noticed. And that meant the game was about to escalate faster than I had anticipated. The night was thick, humid, Miami air pressing against my skin like a warning I couldn't ignore. I sat in the dim light of my apartment, laptop open, files spread around me, my eyes scanning every movement, every detail, every communication I could intercept. Hours of surveillance, intercepted messages, and careful observation had built a web I thought I controlled. I was wrong. It started subtly. A message popped up on my encrypted burner phone. "Check the north exit. He's not where you think." I froze, pulse quickening. Javier had warned me that Marcus was unpredictable. But I hadn't expected him to act so boldly, so fast. I realized then, the trap I had so carefully constructed might have been noticed. I grabbed my coat and slipped into the night, moving through darkened streets, shadows pressing against me like invisible hands. Every step measured. every breath controlled. I reached the north exit of the warehouse district, the designated point where I had planned my next observation move, and froze. There was a car. Black, sleek, silent. The engine off. No lights. My instincts screamed danger. I took a slow, deliberate step forward and the headlights snapped on. There he was. Marcus Alvarez. But not alone. Lara, the woman who had betrayed me, manipulated him, and attempted to undermine my career. She smiled. A predatory, triumphant smile. And in that instant, the truth hit me. This was bigger than I had imagined. They had been planning something together all along. A coordinated move. A final attempt to isolate me, discredit me, and destroy everything I had begun to reclaim. My hands shook, not with fear, but with calculated fury. Every plan I had made, every observation, every small victory, they had anticipated it. I realized I had underestimated them both. And now the rules had changed. I ducked into the shadows, careful not to be seen, and pulled up the files on my phone. I quickly analyzed the communications I had intercepted between Marcus and Lara. There it was. The midpoint shock I had been dreading but now had to confront. They were planning to frame me. All of it. Every small act of resistance I had executed they had predicted, documented, and were preparing to turn it against me. A perfect setup. Evidence manipulated, witnesses coerced, my reputation destroyed. I had thought I controlled the narrative. I had thought I had the advantage. But they had adapted faster than I anticipated. I had to act. Immediately. I moved silently, weaving through alleyways, using the city's shadows to my advantage. Every step was a calculated risk, every breath measured, every heartbeat a warning drum. I reached a vantage point and watched. Marcus and Lara were coordinating with precision. Maps, phones, gestures, I could see the plan unfolding like a predator stalking prey. I felt a surge of adrenaline, a mixture of anger and exhilaration. They thought they had me cornered. They thought I would falter. But I had learned patience. I had learned strategy. And now, the reversal was mine to orchestrate. I activated a hidden camera I had installed earlier, a decoy for surveillance. They would think they were observing me. But in reality, I was observing them. Every movement, every word, every subtle signal was recorded. Proof not just of betrayal but of intent. Proof I could weaponize. I smiled faintly, letting the thought sink in. The hunter had become the observed. Hours passed. I documented every interaction, cross-referenced communications, logged movements, timestamps, and locations. The magnitude of their conspiracy stunned me. But within it, I found opportunities, small openings, moments of arrogance, slips in coordination, every flaw a potential lever. And then came the moment that shocked me the most. Lara reached for her phone. I watched through the camera feed as she typed a message meant for Marcus. She suspects nothing. Perfect timing for the transfer. The transfer. Money. Evidence. Power. They were moving against me tonight. Every calculation I had made, every small victory would be tested in real time. I clenched my fists. And in that moment, I made a decision. I would not wait. I would not let them control the narrative. I began executing a series of moves, each faster than the last. Diversion. A subtle digital decoy to mislead their tracking. Leverage. Activation of evidence I had carefully hidden to counter their frames. Observation. Continuous monitoring to anticipate their next steps. Every action required precision. Every second mattered. I realized then the full scope of the battle. This wasn't just about betrayal or revenge anymore. It was a war, and I was prepared to win. Suddenly, a sound behind me, footsteps, deliberate, confident. I spun, instinct taking over. A figure stepped from the shadows. Not Marcus, not Lara, Javier. He looked at me, eyes serious. "They're moving faster than expected," he said. "You need to be ready. This is the moment they try to corner you." I nodded, adrenaline surging. Every plan I had made, the blueprint of revenge, the patience, the small victories would be tested tonight. And the revelation struck me fully. The predator had adapted. But so had I. And now, the reversal was in motion. My phone buzzed again. Unknown number. "Everything depends on your next move. One wrong step. And it's over." The midpoint had arrived. The shock had landed. And now, the game had changed forever. The city felt alive in a way I had never noticed before. Miami at night, neon lights shimmering across the water, taxis humming past, the faint murmur of distant music, everything moved with purpose, as if anticipating the storm about to break. And in the midst of it, I moved like a ghost, invisible but deliberate, every step calculated, every breath measured. This was the night. The night when preparation became action. The night when patience turned into execution. I had studied Marcus and Lara for weeks, mapped routines, communications, and interactions. Every slip, every pattern, every vulnerability catalogued. Now, the moment of truth had arrived. I took a deep breath, letting my pulse settle just enough for clarity. The trap had been laid carefully, subtle, almost imperceptible but deadly. I reviewed the sequence one last time. Observation. They would arrive at the usual location, unaware that I was already monitoring their movements. Interception. Any attempt to manipulate, threaten, or isolate me would be countered immediately. Exposure. Every act they committed would be recorded, leaving nothing to chance. It wasn't just revenge. It wasn't just justice. It was a calculated unmasking, designed to strip them of their control completely. I left the safe house, blending into the shadows, my laptop and burner phone in a small, secure backpack. The streets were quiet but never empty, and every glance over my shoulder, every reflection in a window, reminded me that Marcus had eyes everywhere. I couldn't afford mistakes. I arrived at the location I had chosen, a nondescript office building, empty at this hour, perfect for observing without being seen. I slipped inside and set up surveillance, cameras positioned, lines of sight calibrated, digital decoys in place. Every piece of the puzzle was ready, every potential reaction accounted for. And yet, a part of me couldn't stop the familiar flutter of adrenaline, fear, excitement, anticipation, all tangled together. Hours passed as I monitored. Through hidden cameras and digital intercepts, I watched Marcus and Lara move with precision, confident in their plan, completely unaware that the tables had turned. Lara adjusted her hair, checked her phone. Marcus paced, muttering under his breath, completely oblivious to the net closing around them. I smirked. Small victories had taught me patience. Now, they were about to learn the cost of underestimating me. The first step was subtle. I sent a carefully crafted message to Lara's phone, an anonymous tip suggesting that Marcus had been dishonest, that evidence of their manipulations was surfacing. Nothing overt, just enough to rattle her. I watched her phone buzz, and the micro-expression on her face was priceless, a flash of fear, quickly masked, but there. The predator had just glimpsed a threat, and it wasn't him. Marcus noticed immediately. He paused, glanced at Lara, whispered something sharply, and then checked his own devices. The first crack had appeared in their confidence. This was the moment the execution truly began. I activated the next phase, digital manipulation. Files strategically released, decoy evidence planted, communications intercepted and subtly altered to mislead. Every action designed to provoke the exact reaction I needed. The net was tightening, and they didn't even know it. Then came the physical component. I had arranged for allies' quiet, discreet, trusted positions strategically to witness, document, and assist if needed. They were ready to intervene, but only if Marcus or Lara attempted escalation. This wasn't about brute force. It was about control, precision, and inevitability. I watched, heart racing, as Marcus's arrogance began to slip. Small gestures betrayed his growing concern. Lara's composure faltered as well. Every micro-expression was recorded, every subtle misstep noted. The evidence I had been gathering for weeks was now weaponized in real time. Then the unexpected. Lara, panicked, made a move, reaching for a hidden phone, attempting to coordinate a countermeasure. I anticipated it. A simple digital override. A subtle alert to my allies, and her move was neutralized before she even knew it. Marcus froze, realizing too late that their plan had been compromised. His confidence shattered in a series of micro-moments that told me everything I needed to know. Fear had entered their dynamic, and with fear came mistakes. I pressed forward, carefully. Every step was deliberate, every message and observation designed to escalate tension without giving myself away. The first real confrontation was still hours away, but the groundwork was being laid with surgical precision. The predator was reacting to my presence, my strategy, my patience. Every instinct, every move I had honed over weeks was paying off. I leaned back, watching them through the cameras, heart steady but adrenaline coursing, whispering to myself. This is only the beginning. Every move you make now will be your undoing. Hours blurred as the night deepened. I documented every action, every communication, every subtle slip. The execution of the plan was not a single strike, it was a symphony of timing, observation, and reaction. And then, just as I was about to initiate the next phase, my phone buzzed. A single, cryptic message from an unknown number. He knows you're watching. They've suspected all along. Move carefully. One wrong step. The game had escalated faster than I anticipated. The trap had been set, but now I realized I was being tested. And I knew this. The true execution had only just begun. I leaned closer to the laptop, my pulse steadying. The surveillance cameras picked up Marcus moving toward an exit I hadn't expected him to use. The moment of truth was approaching faster than I had planned. And one misstep could ruin everything. The hunt had begun, and the first strike was imminent. The night outside the office window had darkened into something heavier, thicker, like the sky itself was holding its breath with me. I had planned this confrontation for weeks. But somehow, I wasn't ready. Not emotionally, not physically, not spiritually, because confronting Marcus wasn't just a tactical moment. It wasn't a chess move. It wasn't another careful step. It was the moment I had avoided for years. The moment where I had to face the man who once swore he loved me. The man who smashed a cake into my face and laughed. The man who called me dramatic while blood trickled down my throat. The man who left me humiliated in front of friends. The man whose mistress smiled as if I were a joke. Everything inside me trembled, not from fear, but from contained fire. Tonight, fire would speak. At exactly 1:14 a.m., Marcus made his move. The cameras caught him exiting the building and heading straight toward the underground parking lot. But this time, not alone. He had his phone pressed to his ear. I watched him through the screen as he spoke, voice low, movements sharp. Then, my burner phone buzzed. Unknown number. I knew who it was. I answered. I know you're watching. His voice was steady. Too steady. My breath tightened. I didn't speak. Come out. Right now. We need to talk. Why? I whispered. Marcus let out a humorless laugh. Cold. Calculated. Exactly the tone he used when he was cornered. Because you're in way deeper than you think. And if you don't come out, someone else is going to get hurt tonight. Not me. Someone else? A chill rolled down my spine. I stepped closer to the laptop, scanning the feeds, and then I saw her, Lara, standing near the stairwell, clutching her stomach, visibly shaking. And behind her, a man in dark clothing, tall, broad, shadowed, standing just a few feet behind her, not helping her, watching her. My pulse roared into my ears. This wasn't part of my plan. This wasn't in any scenario I'd calculated. Marcus had brought insurance, not protection, leverage. And Lara, for the first time, looked terrified. I grabbed my bag and ran, not recklessly, not blindly, but with the speed of someone who finally understood that tonight wasn't strategy anymore. Tonight was survival. Down the hallway, down 2 flights of stairs, through the emergency exit, out into the humid Miami night. My lungs burned. My heart raced, but my mind was ice. I stepped into the parking structure. It echoed cold and hollow, each sound bouncing like ghosts trapped in concrete. Then, footsteps, slow, measured, approaching from behind a row of cars. I turned. Marcus stepped out of the shadows. And for the first time, he didn't look smug. He looked cornered. Finally, he said, "You made the right choice." I held his gaze, standing 3 cars' length away, close enough to see him, far enough to run. "What did you do to her?" I asked. He shrugged. "I didn't do anything. Yet." My blood chilled. He motioned toward the stairwell with a tilt of his chin. "She made a mistake tonight, big one. And I can't let her take us down." "Take you down?" I repeated softly. "So this is about you protecting yourself?" He smirked. "Everything is about protecting myself." Something in me hardened. All the pain. All the humiliation. All the nights I cried alone. All the lies. Something inside me snapped into clarity. Marcus stepped closer. "One question," he said. "Why are you doing all this? Why spy on us? Why sabotage me? Why now? Why now?" I almost laughed. Because you hurt me, I said quietly. Because you made me feel small. Because you laughed when I was bleeding. Because you told people I was too sensitive after your violence put me in the ER. He flinched at the word violence. I didn't. Yes, you did. My voice didn't shake. Not anymore. You broke something in me that night, Marcus. Not bones. Not skin. Something much deeper. And you didn't care. His eyes flickered annoyance, guilt, annoyance again. You're being dramatic, he muttered. It was a joke. Everyone does. Not like that. I cut him off. And not to a wife you claim to love. He clenched his jaw. You're blowing everything out of proportion. There it was. The line he always used. The lie he clung to. This time, the words didn't control me. This time, they fueled me. I lifted my chin. I'm not here to argue, I said. I'm here because you dragged someone else into your mess. She's shaking, Marcus. Terrified. And you're using her as leverage. He stiffened. Don't act like she's innocent. She knew what she signed up for. No one signs up for you, I said. Not once you show your real self. His eyes narrowed. Then he stepped forward fast. My breath hitched. But I didn't move. Marcus got close enough for me to smell his cologne. The same scent he wore the night he humiliated me. He leaned in. You think you're smarter than me. But you're not. Everything you've done? I've watched it. Every file. I've traced it. Every move? I've tracked it. My pulse roared. Then why are you shaking? I whispered. He froze. His eyes darted just once to my left hand. He noticed too late. I was holding something small and discreet. A detonator. Not for explosives. But for a device. His lips parted. What is that? I breathed out slowly. A signal, I said, to release everything. Marcus's face drained of color. Everything? He echoed. Yes, I whispered. All the recordings. All the files. All your messages. All your accounts. Everything I've collected. His hands tightened into fists. You wouldn't. Try me. For the first time all night, he broke. His voice cracked barely but enough for me to hear it. You don't know what you're doing, he said. If you send everything out, you'll ruin both of us. No, I said softly. I'll ruin you. And I'll finally save myself. His jaw twitched. It was the first fully honest reaction he'd shown in years. Fear. Real fear. You're insane, he said softly. You're actually insane. No, I said. I'm awake. I turned toward the stairwell. But his voice stopped me. You think Lara is scared because of me? He shouted. You think she's shaking because I brought someone to watch her? I turned slowly. He gave a bitter, humorless laugh. She's not scared of me, he said. She's scared of you. I blinked. What? You terrified her, he said. You and your little anonymous messages. Your mysterious warnings. Your digital games. She thinks someone is watching her, hunting her, coming after her. She thinks you want her dead. My heart stuttered. No, I whispered. That's not. She misunderstood. She thinks you're unstable, he said. And she's not wrong. I stared at him, stunned. Words tangled like vines in my throat. And Marcus saw it. His eyes glimmered, with triumph, because he knew, in that moment, he'd introduced doubt, internal conflict, guilt, a weapon. I whispered, where is she? Marcus smiled. And the smile said everything. He wasn't the one in control anymore. I was. But he would die before he admitted it. He pointed toward the stairwell. She's right where you want her, he said softly. Waiting. Crying. Thinking you're the one who set all of this up. My breath trembled. And she's blaming herself, he added. For believing me. For hurting you. For going along with everything. I didn't want her hurt, I said. He shrugged. But she is. Because you started something you couldn't control. No, you did that. Not me. We both did, he said. And the difference is, you don't know how to finish it without destroying yourself. I stepped backward. Toward the stairwell. Toward the truth. Toward the girl who once held her phone with a smirk. And now held her stomach like she was holding herself together. Marcus watched me go. Calm. Still. Too still. Be careful, he said. She might not want to see you. I swallowed hard and pushed the door open. The stairwell was cold. echoing. Silent. At the landing 2 floors down, Lara sat against the wall, shoulders shaking, eyes glossy with terror. And just as I took my first step toward her, she flinched. Violently. As if I were the danger. "Don't come any closer," she whispered. My heart cracked. "Lara. I'm not here to hurt you," I breathed. She shook her head rapidly. "No. No. No. He said you'd come. He said you'd finish what you started." "What I started?" I whispered. Her breath hitched. Then she said something I will never forget. "He told me you want me dead." I froze, halfway down the steps. Behind me, the stairwell door clicked shut. I turned my head. Marcus stood at the top of the stairs, smiling. The trap had just flipped. On me, the stairwell felt colder than it should have. Concrete walls, metallic handrails, flickering fluorescent lights. Everything closing in around me like a tightening fist. Lara's breath was shaking. Her eyes were wide and haunted, darting between me and Marcus. And Marcus looked like a man who had finally found his footing. Standing at the top of the stairs, backlit by the dim hallway light, he looked almost serene. A puppet master who cherished watching strings pull taut. "Lara," I whispered, lifting my hands slowly, palms open. "I'm not here to hurt you. I swear." "Don't move," she choked out. Her voice cracked like fragile glass. "I don't want to die tonight." Those words hit me harder than anything Marcus had ever done. "Who told you that?" I whispered. She looked up at the ceiling, as if searching for an escape route in the air itself. "He did," she said shakily. "He told me your messages, your warnings, your anonymous tips, were all threats. He said you wanted to ruin me. He said you'd snap eventually." My stomach dropped. Marcus didn't climb down the stairs. He leaned casually against the railing at the top, hands in pockets, eyelids low. An observer. A spectator. Watching two women unravel as he stood above like a king surveying chaos. I took another step down. The metal groaned beneath my foot. Lara jerked backward, pressing herself tighter into the corner. "Stop," she cried. "Please, just stop moving." My throat tightened. "Lara, listen to me." She shook her head violently, hands trembling over her chest. "No. No. No. Not after everything. Not after the messages. Not after the photos sent to my phone. Not after someone described my outfit from across the street. Not after someone said they knew where I slept." My blood went cold. "I never sent those," I whispered. Lara let out a broken laugh. "You expect me to believe that?" I looked up at Marcus. He smiled. A soft, victorious smile. Like he had been waiting for me to realize I wasn't fighting one enemy. I was fighting two versions of him. The man who hurt me, and the man who hurt her, simultaneously. "Lara," I said carefully. "Someone played both of us." She blinked. "Both of us?" "Yes. Me and you." I swallowed. "He used me to scare you. And he used you to break me." Her lip trembled. But she didn't respond. Instead she whispered. "He told me, tonight. You planned to take revenge on both of us. He said you were the one who hired that man behind me." I froze. "What man?" The stairwell shadows shifted. I saw him. A figure stepping forward from just out of view of the camera. Tall. Broad. Jacket pulled low. Hands in pockets. Silent. Watching. Waiting. My breathing stuttered. This wasn't part of my plan. Not orchestrated by me. Which meant, he wasn't mine. He was Marcus's. I snapped my head upward. "Marcus? Who the hell is that?" Marcus tilted his head slightly, as if examining artwork. "Insurance," he said simply. "Someone to keep things under control." "Under control?" I spat. He smiled faintly. "Well, you control your little digital circus." Thought I'd even the playing field. Lara let out a soft sob. "You told me he was here because she wanted me hurt," she whispered. Marcus didn't even blink. "I say a lot of things." My hands shook with rage. "You used her," I said quietly. "You terrified her." "I protected myself," he corrected. "You've crossed lines." "I warned her." "I warned you." Now here we are. The man in the back took 2 steps forward, boots echoing through the stairwell. Lara whimpered. Marcus lifted a casual hand. The man stopped instantly. Obedient. Trained. Paid. A chilling realization sank through me. Marcus hadn't been reacting to my plan. He had been building his own. And now I was inside it. Lara, I whispered again. Please. I never threatened you. Not once. I tried to warn you about him. Her voice cracked. That's what he said you'd say. At that moment, something inside me almost collapsed. Not because she didn't believe me, but because Marcus had engineered this moment perfectly. Lara stood between us. Terrified of me, trusting him, doubting herself. And I stood caught between saving her and saving myself. Chaos. Pure, orchestrated chaos. Marcus stepped down one stair. Then another. Then another. Deliberate. Slow. Predatory. The stairwell echoed with his measured descent. I stepped back. Lara curled tighter. The man in the shadows shifted forward. We were cornered. Different corners. Same trap. Marcus reached the landing. Just 3 steps above me. Face to face. Close enough for me to see the faint scar near his eyebrow. Close enough for him to smell the fear rising off both of us. You think you're the only genius in the room. He whispered. You think you're the only one who can plan. I clenched my teeth. You're not smart. I murmured. You're just cruel. He grinned. That's still effective. My hands curled into fists. He leaned down slightly, lowering his voice. You thought your little revenge game would end cleanly? You thought you'd expose me and walk away untouched. Life doesn't work that way. You break something. He tapped my chest lightly. You bleed too. I slapped his hand away. His expression didn't change. He stepped even closer. Give me everything, he said softly. Drop your plan. Delete your files. Stop the games. And maybe I'll let tonight end quietly. My eyes locked onto his. I'm not afraid of you. He smiled. You should be. The lights flickered. Then, bang. Not a gunshot. The heavy stairwell doors slammed open. Everyone froze. My pulse surged. A second man stepped in. Same build, same jacket, same cold silence. Lara screamed. Marcus didn't move. He simply sighed, annoyed. You weren't supposed to come down yet, Marcus muttered. Both men stood still, gray ghosts in a concrete tomb. Lara pressed herself against the wall, sobbing harder. And I, for the first time tonight, felt real fear claw into my chest. This wasn't a confrontation anymore. This was a corner. A trap. A moment designed to break us. Marcus smiled like a conductor whose orchestra had finally arrived. You see? He whispered. Everything is under control. Not mine. Not hers. His. This wasn't a setback. This was a collapse. My plan, once elegant and surgical, was bleeding out on the cold concrete floor. I hadn't lost control. I had never actually had it. Marcus held every piece, every variable, every fear, every lie, every pawn. And now, I was staring at the darkest truth yet. I wasn't just fighting Marcus. I was fighting the version of Marcus who planned for my retaliation before I even imagined it, the version who anticipated my next move, who countered every angle, who weaponized every person around me, who twisted my intentions into threats. And now, who had reinforcements. The taller man stepped forward. The second one followed. Lara screamed again, covering her face. I stepped between her and them without thinking. Instinct kicking in. Marcus exhaled, disappointed. Don't make this difficult, he said. You're outnumbered, outplayed, and out of time. I lifted my chin, heart pounding. What now? I whispered. Marcus smiled faintly. Now? Now I show you what consequences look like. He nodded once. The two men moved. Toward me. Fast. I braced myself. And then, the stairwell lights went out. Total darkness. A scream. A heavy thud. A gasp. Footsteps scattering. Someone grabbed me. Or I grabbed them. I couldn't tell. Chaos swallowed everything. And in that darkness, someone whispered in my ear. Run. Now. Before he finds you. I didn't recognize the voice. The darkness lingered longer than it should have. The stairwell lights flickered once, twice, then died completely. Concrete walls, damp air, the faint echo of distant traffic. It was a tomb built for fear. Somewhere in the shadows, someone moved. Footsteps, soft, deliberate, but not Marcus's. Not one of the two men who had cornered us. Someone else. A stranger. I felt a hand on my shoulder, firm, Steady. Follow me, the voice whispered. I spun but not violently. Not recklessly. It was a woman. Unknown. Unrecognizable. Dressed in black, almost blending with the shadows. I know who you are, she said. No one else can help you. But I can. I hesitated, instinct screaming. Adrenaline roiling through my veins. Who are you? I asked softly. She glanced back at the stairwell, where Marcus's men had stopped, unsure in the shadows. They call me a problem solver. I fix situations people can't manage themselves. Her words were enigmatic, yet there was an authority in her tone I couldn't ignore. I had been outmaneuvered, cornered, and on the brink. And suddenly here was someone offering a lifeline. She leaned closer. Voice almost a whisper. Marcus Alvarez is not just dangerous because he's cruel. He's dangerous because he's planned every eventuality. And he's left a trail of people like you, silent victims, manipulated, trapped. I felt my blood run cold. Everything I had seen tonight, the fear, the traps, the way Lara believed I intended to harm her. It wasn't just Marcus being arrogant. It was calculated. And the men with him? I asked. They're not just enforcers, she said. They're part of a network. Paid, trained and loyal only to him. I swallowed hard. So, how do you know all this? She hesitated, then slowly revealed. I used to work for him, in the shadows. I handled delicate situations. I know his methods. And I know his weaknesses. My mind reeled. Everything I thought I understood, every observation, every pattern I had exploited. She had seen it all from the inside. I realized then. I was no longer just in a battle for revenge. I was in a chess game with a master, and the stranger just offered me the first glimpse of the board. She glanced at Lara, crouched in the corner, trembling. You want to save her? She asked. Yes, I breathed. You want to survive this? Yes, I said again, more firmly this time. She nodded once. Good. Then you'll need to trust me. Fully. I hesitated. But the reality was clear. Alone I had been trapped. Cornered. Outnumbered. Outplayed. With her, I might have a chance. Without her, we would all be finished. I swallowed my pride. All right, I said. I trust you. The stranger's eyes softened ever so slightly. Good. Then listen carefully. She guided us into a small maintenance corridor I hadn't noticed before. It's not much, she said softly. But it's enough to buy time. She leaned close to me and spoke quickly. Marcus believes he controls everything. Every move, every reaction, every fear. But he didn't account for two things. You are unpredictable when cornered. I have inside knowledge he doesn't suspect I still possess. I felt a spark of hope. My mind, racing for weeks with strategy, now had a new axis. The stranger explained that she had observed his communications, his secret transfers, the men he relied on. Tonight he expects his plan to unfold flawlessly, she said. But with careful timing, you can exploit his arrogance and expose him completely. I looked at Lara. She was still trembling. I whispered, You're safe. For now. Her eyes flickered with a mixture of relief and disbelief. Then, quietly, she said, You really are the one who's been planning to protect me. I nodded. Yes. And now we have help. The stranger moved closer. First, she said, we get you out of sight. Then we gather everything you've collected, the evidence, the files, the recordings. And then, we hit him where it hurts. I felt a surge of adrenaline. The momentum was shifting. Marcus had believed himself untouchable. He hadn't counted on an insider, or the fact that I could still think strategically even while cornered. Tonight wasn't over. But now, for the first time, I saw the way forward. As we moved silently through the corridors, she leaned closer and whispered, There's one secret about Marcus you don't know. One weakness he's never revealed. And it's the key to ending this once and for all. I held my breath. Tell me. Her eyes met mine. And in that gaze I saw the magnitude of what she was about to reveal. A truth that could shift the entire battle. Undo everything Marcus had built, and change the course of our revenge forever. She said softly, He trusts no one. But he trusts his ego more than his allies. He's blind when it comes to anyone who doesn't play by his rules. That arrogance, that ego, is the thread you pull to unravel everything. My heart pounded. Every planning session, every small victory, Every observation, it all pointed to this moment. The secret was simple, but devastating. Marcus's downfall wasn't a person. It wasn't a file. It was his own hubris. And now, we had the leverage. We crept toward a stairwell exit. I held Lara close, whispering reassurances. The stranger moved ahead, scanning shadows, listening. And then, from behind the corner, a voice cut through the dark. You shouldn't have left your files where I could find them. It was Marcus. Calm. Smiling. Deadly. I froze. The trap wasn't over. The real game, the one that would decide everything, was about to begin. The city hummed outside the abandoned warehouse, a low, constant thrum of life that seemed distant, almost irrelevant, compared to the tension inside. I could hear my own pulse in my ears. The stranger beside me moved with quiet precision, her hand brushing mine for the briefest moment, a signal, not comfort. Lara clung to my arm, trembling but alive, and somewhere in the shadows Marcus waited, convinced he controlled every moment, every breath. Tonight, he would learn how fragile control really is. We moved into position. The stranger whispered instructions. Step 1. Marcus will believe he's luring you into panic. Step 2. Exploit his arrogance. Step 3. Expose him to everyone he trusts. I nodded, heart pounding. Every word was a pulse of strategy, every instruction a key to survival and victory. I checked the files I had collected, photos, messages, recordings, everything Marcus had used to manipulate and terrorize me and others. Every secret he thought buried. Now, they would all be unleashed. We set cameras strategically, ensuring the confrontation would be visible to the world, to friends, colleagues, and his allies. I wasn't just reclaiming power. I was ensuring justice, public, undeniable, and irreversible. Marcus appeared, as predicted, through the far doorway. Calm, confident, smiling that same infuriating, self-assured smirk. You're predictable, he said softly. Everything you do is always the same. I stepped forward. No, I said, voice steady despite the fire coursing through me. This time, you're wrong, he laughed lightly. Big words for someone outnumbered and cornered. I felt Lara press herself behind me. Her fear was tangible, but her presence gave me strength. This wasn't just about me anymore, it was about protecting her. About proving that cruelty would meet its reckoning. The stranger moved silently, positioning herself near the exit, a contingency plan in place in case Marcus tried to escalate. I realized then that tonight, chaos had allies. And Marcus was about to face a storm he hadn't anticipated. I activated the first part of my plan, a subtle digital broadcast. Screens in the warehouse flickered to life, showing Marcus's texts, his secret communications, the messages he'd sent to manipulate Lara, and the financial records proving deception and exploitation. Marcus froze. Just a microsecond, but it was enough. The confidence in his smirk faltered. Eyes darted, hands twitched slightly. I stepped forward. You thought you were untouchable, I said softly. But here's the truth. Marcus, you aren't. Lara gasped softly. The stranger watched quietly, alert, ready. Marcus's breathing quickened. His ego, the thing that had controlled him, was cracking. And I felt the power shift, imperceptible at first, then undeniable. I advanced further, commanding attention. All of this, your lies, your manipulations, your threats, your games, documented and undeniable. Every whisper of authority in the room shifted toward me. Marcus tried to speak, to intercept, but his words faltered. That's not. No one defended him. No one came to his side. Because everyone who had believed him could now see what he truly was. Screens displayed financial fraud he'd orchestrated, threatening messages to manipulate women, hidden accounts used to cover lies, proof of Lara's coerced silence and the intimidation tactics used against me. Marcus's face drained of color. Every move he had made to secure power now became chains around his neck. I felt the surge in adrenaline so sharp it burned in my veins. This ends tonight, I said. And you will answer for everything. Marcus stepped back, now visibly panicked. The stranger subtly blocked any escape routes, leaving him contained, cornered in the truth. Lara's eyes, still wide with fear, now reflected awe and relief. I advanced, slowly, deliberately, letting the weight of my words and presence dominate the room. You humiliated me. You terrified me. You used others to cover your lies. And for years, you thought you were untouchable. Tonight, you see yourself as the small man you always were. The words echoed, hitting every hidden nerve. Marcus's breath hitched. His arrogance, once a fortress, was collapsing. I motioned to the stranger. She released the final piece, an encrypted video that Marcus had never intended anyone to see. The room went silent. The footage showed Marcus manipulating a former ally, coercing compliance through lies and threats. Moments that proved intent, deceit, and cruelty beyond doubt. Lara's eyes filled with tears. I swallowed, voice trembling, but firm. Now you see. Not only did you underestimate me, Marcus. You underestimated the world. And the people who can finally see you for what you are. He stared, frozen. No words came. No excuses. Power shifted fully to me. The predator was now prey. I felt the culmination of weeks of planning and tension. Every sleepless night. Every calculated observation. Every subtle move leading to this moment of undeniable justice. I didn't strike physically. I didn't need to. The exposure, the public, undeniable truth, that was the weapon. The humiliation, the unraveling of ego, that was the victory. Marcus had built walls of fear and lies. I brought them down with truth. Lara approached cautiously. I took her hand. Her trembling began to slow. A sense of safety and agency returned to her. Marcus sank into a chair, defeated. The weight of everything he had orchestrated pressing down on him. Not just exposed. Not just cornered. But powerless in the face of his own arrogance. I stood there, chest heaving, sweat on my brow, but exhilarated. The storm of fear, of planning, of anticipation, of rage, all dissipated into clarity. I glanced at Lara. She nodded silently, gratitude and shock mixing with relief. The stranger stepped back, allowing me the spotlight, and whispered softly, "You did it. You finally struck back." I nodded, voice quiet but firm. "Yes. But this is only the beginning. Because while Marcus was broken tonight, the world outside would still need to know what he had done. And I was ready to make sure of it." As the night air seeped in from the warehouse windows, Marcus finally spoke, voice low, almost defeated. "You think this changes everything?" I leaned closer, calm, eyes burning. "It changes you." And for the first time in years, I felt the power fully in my hands. But outside the walls, the city pulsed on. And I knew the final act, the one that would truly seal Marcus's fate, was still ahead. The first rays of dawn slipped over the Miami skyline, pale and hesitant, like a witness to the chaos of the night before. The city hummed below, unaware of the storm that had erupted inside the walls of that warehouse. I stood on the balcony of my apartment hours later, coffee in hand, letting the humid breeze wash over me. My body ached not from exertion, but from the weight of truth, exposure, and the raw emotions of the past 24 hours. Every decision, every calculated risk, every plan executed, it all led here. Lara was safe, alive, shaken, yes, but free from the manipulations and terror Marcus had orchestrated. I had texted her earlier. "We survived. That's all that matters for now." She had replied almost immediately. "Thanks to you. I don't know how to even begin thanking you." I didn't answer. Some victories are best left unsaid. The satisfaction of justice, of exposure, of survival, is its own reward. And yet, the taste of victory was bittersweet. Marcus was exposed. His allies now wary, his networks unraveling. But he was still out there. He would always be a shadow. The reality settled in. Revenge is never clean. It leaves fingerprints on your soul, and mine were burned in deep. I sank into my couch, replaying the events in my mind. The cake incident, the ER, the humiliation, the lies, the threats. All of it had led me here. All of it had forced me to confront my deepest fears, my own anger, and the parts of myself I had ignored for years. I realized then revenge wasn't just about punishment. It was about claiming my life back, my dignity, my power. And for the first time, I understood something I hadn't before. Rebuilding after betrayal isn't about returning to who you were. It's about becoming someone stronger, someone wiser, someone unafraid of the world and the monsters in it. The stranger, my unlikely ally, had vanished as quietly as she appeared, leaving behind only guidance and the knowledge that I could execute the final moves myself. I sat at my laptop, opening the files I had secured. Emails, photos, videos, financial records. Evidence enough to topple Marcus completely in the eyes of the law, the media and the people who once trusted him. But I hesitated. I didn't want to act out of rage anymore. I wanted to act with precision, with purpose, with justice. I spent hours drafting messages, preparing evidence for release, and thinking through every potential consequence. Each step deliberate, each step strategic. The game of survival had become a game of ethics, of calculated morality, of delivering power without destroying myself in the process. Later that afternoon, Lara came by. Her eyes still haunted, softened when she saw me. "Are you okay?" she asked. I nodded slowly. "I'm better, stronger." She hesitated, then whispered, "I owe you my life." I smiled faintly, placing a hand on her shoulder. "You don't owe me anything. Just live. Be careful. And trust yourself more than anyone else." Her lips quivered, and for the first time, I saw hope flicker behind her fear. It was a reminder, the battle wasn't just against Marcus. It was against the fear and doubt he had planted in all of us, and removing that restoring self-trust was the truest form of victory. I walked through the apartment later, the city sprawling beneath me. The lights, the noise, the chaos of life continuing outside. It felt almost unreal. I thought about who I had been before the betrayal, who I had been during the chaos, who I had become now. The version of me that stood up to Marcus, that navigated fear, that protected the innocent, that executed the plan flawlessly. She wasn't the woman who had accepted humiliation in silence. She wasn't the woman who believed power belonged to others. She was me, fully alive, fully present, fully unwilling to surrender. And for the first time in years, I felt whole. I understood finally. Revenge isn't about breaking someone else, it's about reclaiming yourself. Power isn't about domination. It's about knowing you can rise from betrayal, chaos, and fear without losing yourself. Justice isn't about punishment, it's about balance. Marcus had lost. I had gained. But not through anger alone. Through clarity, through strategy, through understanding the limits of fear and the reach of courage. I looked at Lara and whispered softly, "Remember this. You're never powerless unless you let someone convince you that you are." Even with Marcus exposed, there remained one final act: releasing the evidence to the authorities, to the public, and ensuring he could never manipulate anyone again. I opened the final folder, checked every file, verified every timestamp. Every detail was correct. Every truth undeniable. I took a deep breath. And I pressed send. The final act of justice had begun. And for the first time I allowed myself to hope. Hope that the nightmare was ending. Hope that the fear, the manipulation, the betrayal was finally over. I sank into the couch, exhausted, watching the city beneath me. The battle had been won, but the final consequences were still unfolding. Marcus's empire of lies, the stories of those he had hurt, the public's judgment, it would all land soon. And in that silence, I realized, the next few hours would decide everything. Not just for Marcus, not just for Lara, but for me. The first morning sunlight cut across the Miami skyline, warm and golden, but tinged with the quiet aftermath of chaos. I stepped out onto the balcony, inhaling deeply. The air smelled like salt and rain, the humid tang of a city waking up. Below me, life went on. Cars honked, joggers moved in rhythm along the waterfront. Street vendors arranged their stalls. The world didn't know what had happened the night before. And yet, everything had changed. Because the truth was out. Marcus Alvarez, the man who had tried to control, manipulate, and terrify, was no longer untouchable. Emails pinged. Messages buzzed. News outlets had picked up fragments of the evidence I had released. Financial manipulation, threats and intimidation, lies, deception, and broken trust. Every lie he had spun was unraveling. Every carefully built facade had collapsed. The man who had tried to make me small, powerless, invisible, was exposed. And I was free. Lara had messaged me earlier. "I can breathe. I can finally breathe. Thank you, truly." I stared at the screen, lips pressed tight, letting a single tear slip. The victory wasn't just mine, it was shared. It was about reclaiming life, dignity, and control. I sat down, coffee in hand, and reflected on the journey. From the cake smashed in my face, to the ER call, to the betrayal, lies, and the fear that had clawed at me night after night. I realized that every moment, every humiliation, every pang of rage, had forged me. I had not only survived. I had adapted, evolved, and risen above the chaos. The moral was clear. Betrayal does not define you. Humiliation does not define you. The darkness that others try to throw on you if faced with clarity and courage can illuminate the path to your own power. I had learned that revenge is not just punishment, it is reclamation. It is taking back the life that someone tried to steal. It is proving to yourself, and the world, that your spirit cannot be broken. I began the work of rebuilding not just my reputation, but my inner life. Every email I sent, every conversation I had, every connection I nurtured was now guided by wisdom, experience, and hard-earned insight. I reclaimed my network, my power, and my sense of self. I no longer let fear dictate my decisions. I no longer let anger consume me. I acted with precision, purpose, and vision. And I helped others who had been hurt by Marcus's manipulations. The evidence I released wasn't just for my revenge, it was for justice. For Lara, for everyone he had silenced, for everyone he had tried to control. I had become more than a survivor. I had become an agent of change. A force not of destruction but of truth. I poured another cup of coffee and watched the sunrise deepen, painting the city in shades of hope. I understood that strength is not just about fighting. It is about resilience. It is about patience. It is about knowing when to act and when to wait. Betrayal will come. Deception will come. Pain will come. But so will clarity. So will justice. So will empowerment. I whispered softly to myself. I am not who I was yesterday. I am not defined by the cruelty of others. I am defined by the courage I choose today. And tomorrow. Lara came by that evening. We sat together in the quiet of my apartment, the skyline glowing gold and pink. I don't know if I could have survived without you, she said softly. I smiled, placing a hand on hers. You already had the strength, I replied. I just helped you see it. We laughed quietly, the first real laughter since the nightmare began. And I realized, survival is sweet. Justice is sweeter. And freedom is the sweetest of all. If you're watching this, take a moment to reflect. Life can throw betrayal, humiliation, or lies your way, but you have power you haven't even realized. Subscribe now because every story of struggle, every story of triumph, needs witnesses. And for those who won't subscribe, I want to hear why. Enter the comment section and tell me why you won't. I'm listening. Your voice matters. Your story matters. And sometimes, the first step to reclaiming your life is paying attention to the truth. I stepped back onto the balcony one last time that night. The city lights sparkled below like stars brought to earth. Marcus was exposed, justice was served, and those I cared for were safe. And I understood, finally, the true victory isn't in revenge. It's in reclaiming yourself. It's in taking the power others tried to steal, and using it to light your own path. No one can take that from you. No betrayal can define you. And no lie can control the truth you carry inside. I smiled faintly. The dawn had arrived. And with it, a new life,